If you've been tracking the political situation in the United States, maybe you have the same disheartened feeling I do, which is that there's something really wrong in this story. Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Chris Martenson here with Peak Prosperity, and this is an update for you, scouting report. Something is really wrong, and here's the way I'm looking at it now. You know what? Is this too strong? I don't think it is. I'm starting to see signs of a death cult out there. If that's too strong for you, let's just call it an anti-life cult. What do I mean by cult? A cult is an organized system of thinking that fundamentally works against your better long-term and maybe even short-term interests. So do we have a case to make that we have a cult out there that's operating in a way that's not the best for you, not the best for me, not the best for our kids, our grandkids as yet unborn, for future generations? The answer, I submit, is yes. So I was watching the Harris acceptance speech at the DNC recently and listened to Pox on both houses at this point in time, for the most part, with very few bright exceptions out there on the political landscape. But I think that it's emblematic of where we are in the story. We have to call a spade here. We have to talk about, that's a shovel, right? We have to talk about how we got a real problem on our hands. So in a piece for my subscribers that I put up last Friday called Clapping Seals, the blind faith in something called the carrier wave. A carrier wave is that meta wave that carries us all along. If you've lost friends, families, colleagues, spouses, children, parents that you can't talk to anymore, you're going to want to understand what we're talking about with the carrier wave, because there's some kind of psychosis going on. There's some kind of mind control. There's some kind of cult-like behavior. So maybe I got it all wrong. Maybe I'm the guy out here going, I think I have it all right, and they're all crazy, or maybe they're all crazy and we have it right. So here's what I'm talking about. Let me make my case, and then you tell me if you think I'm nuts. I'm totally open to the idea, by the way. I noted that I thought Harris's speech was about 2/3 empty rhetoric, just nothing, just words. Hey, that's okay. That's politics, right? Politicians often just put out palaver. They just say stuff. Nothing happens. Who cares, right? But it was about 1/3 hating on what she projected Trump might do, which oddly enough, in many cases, were things that the Democrats had already done, which is a weird thing. And 0/3 actionable, evaluable policies. Now, this is what really matters to us. Of course, we've got some real predicaments on our hands as a culture here in the United States, but also across the Western world. We have some real problems and predicaments. What's the difference? A problem has a solution. A predicament, just got to manage the outcome. All right, so what did they not mention? What was not even talked about even at all in that DNC acceptance speech by Kamala was any mention of the deficits the DC is running, or how she's going to address that, or how the permanent state of DC plans to address any of that. No plan for how spending might be contained, so nothing about that. No mention of defense budgets or plans, or what really the plan is for the world, or how much is too much, or what the right amount is. None of that. Nothing at all about energy or energy policy. And this is going to really bite the Western world in the butt. It's biting Germany right now. In part 2, I will be talking about that for my subscribers. Big trouble over there going on. And it's because of the energy. It's because of having a bad story. It's because of decommissioning nuclear plants while going all in on wind and solar. And that doesn't actually pencil out. And of course, people should know that. And no plans for infrastructure repair in the United States. Nothing about the United States' terrible standing in such areas as education and life expectancy. Worst out of the industrialized nations. That's like something you could maybe talk about a little bit. Like, we're aware of this. Here's what we think we can do. Nothing. Just like, we're confused. You know why they're confused? Because big business makes big money having people be big sick. And that's just how it is. And so, of course, the people who represent the DNC now are all about big business, big ag, big pharma, big money, big, and they don't care. So actually, the reason you wouldn't talk about the failed life expectancy of the United States compared to other industrialized nations is because too many people that are your friends are making money off of it. And so if that isn't the very definition of an anti-life or even a death cult, somebody who's evil is all about destroying things and making things worse. That's what it does. That's its entire program. It makes things worse. It kills things. It makes them sick. It rots them. It decays them. That's the role of evil, right? And then there's the role of being for life, for joy, actual joy, contentment, those sorts of things, making the future better, building towards a better future. Well, that's hard work. And I didn't see any of that reflected at all in anything that I heard. As well, nothing at all about the ruinous increases in insurance costs for people. That's home insurance, car insurance, life insurance, health insurance, just a whole racket, 100%. Nothing at all about that because, of course, I guess we have to say they're also for big insurance, obviously. Nothing about inflation, nothing at all about ending the various wars the U.S. is supporting or in, proxy wars, direct wars, all of the rest. And no mention of the fentanyl crisis, which is really a crisis of despair. So that's a lot of things that weren't talked about as well. Nothing about these things. Nothing about these things at all. Nothing about excess deaths, nothing about vaccine injuries, nothing about the sudden cancer deaths that are suddenly cropping up, the atrocious rate of ill health and autism among U.S. children. Nothing about that. The fact that people are overwhelmingly fat, sick, and decidedly unhappy, right? Oh no, we'll talk about body positivity and we'll say the word joy. And if we say the word joy enough, all these fat, sick, and decidedly unhappy people might believe that. It's pretty bad. It's pretty bad at this point in time. So I'm going to get to the antidote at the end of this because we have to talk about that. But this is no bueno. And Vigilant Fox, I thought, summed it up very, very well. He was talking about the recent interview with Casey and Callie Means on Tucker Carlson. He wrote here, quote, "You don't know how sick America is until you listen to that interview. The pharma treadmill is making everyone sick, and you won't believe how bad it is until you see these stats. Autism rates in kids are 1 in 36 nationally, compared to 1 in 1,500 in the not-so-distant past. Actually, when I was in school, it was around 1 in 10,000. Now, I defy you to get a group of 100 kids together without seeing 2 or 3 autistic kids in that group. It just wasn't a thing when I was growing up, as far as I was aware. In California, it's even worse at 1 in 22. California, the land of the progressive values. They care so much. They are so much about positivity, LGBTQI2+A, all that. But they have 1 in 22 kids with lifetime impairment from neurological insults of some sort. And they have no curiosity about it. Because, of course, you wouldn't if this is what you wanted. If you wanted this, you would create the conditions for 1 in 22 autism rates, and then you wouldn't do anything about it. You wouldn't look into it. In fact, you might even point at people and yell that they're anti-vaxxers or whatever you're going to call them to prevent people from looking into this absolute crisis. When is enough enough? Is it when it's 1 in 1? Is it 1 in 2? There's a line. I submit we're way past that line. If we were happy and healthy and alert, we would have woken up a long time ago and said, stop. And that's what we're up against. So it's important we have to be able to see this for what it is. We need to see these people clearly. Remember, as Maya Angelou said, when people show you who they are, believe them the first time. I think these people have shown us who they are. The people who like this kind of stuff. 74% of American adults overweight or obese. Close to 50% of children overweight or obese. Not when I was growing up. 50% of American adults have pre-diabetes or type 2 diabetes. That's a metabolic syndrome. It's terrible metabolic disease. 30% of teens are healthiest, have pre-diabetes. Infertility is increasing by about 1% a year. Sperm counts decreasing by about 1% a year since the 1970s. So that's over 40, 50 years now. About 50% decline. Young adult cancers up 79%. So it's our toxic food system. It's our toxic environment, right? And so this is the anti-life agenda laid bare. So there is Casey Means down there. And she explained, she said, quote, "The thing that people need to understand is that all of these conditions are caused or driven by the exact same thing, which is metabolic dysfunction. This core foundational issue of how our bodies are on the cellular level function, which is driven by our toxic food system and our toxic environment. These subtle, insidious forces that are creating slow progressive illness starting now in fetal life that allow patients to be profitable and on the pharma treadmill for their entire lives. They make us sick, but they don't kill us, and then we're drugged for life." End quote. This whole model, this whole sick model of making us sick, it's somebody else's business model. Getting that you and I look at 1 in 22 rates of autism in California and we think, wow, that is horrible. That's horrifying. That's a tragedy. It's beyond a tragedy. It's sick. It's evil. Well, somebody else is making a lot of money off of it and they think it's just dandy, right? And that's the world we live in. So believe them the first time. If I suddenly dropped you into a cult that said, hey, we're going to take 1 in 22 of your children, we're going to sacrifice them to this lifetime sickness god. We're going to give them this magic thing, and they're going to be sick for the rest of their lives. But that's what it costs to be part of our cult without us kicking you out for being a heretical non-believer, you anti-vaxxer, right? Or whatever the cause is, right? But if I said that's what the cult I was just going to drop you into, you would recoil as if you touched a hot stove. And rightly so. This is what we're up against. So that's why this particular cycle that we're entering right now, it's so important that we get this right, that we do not follow charlatans and false prophets and people who fundamentally don't understand what this is. But I have this belief. People want to be healthy. We want to be healthy, content, full of joy, happy, all of that. Now I'm going to tell you about Chantel and Brandon Watt and their 2 daughters. So this happened. This is heartbreaking. And there's a lot of heartbreaking stories like that. That's Brandon there, his 2 daughters. That's his wife. And Chantel Watt wrote about this back, I believe this is in 2021, said, the father of my children died, dropped dead in front of them. At 2 and 6 years old, they lost their daddy traumatically. They will live almost their entire lives without one of 2 people who love them most, without one of 2 people every kid deserves to grow up with. Brandon's death shook our community, continues to shake it. It's about to rumble it more. And I've been very open about every aspect of it, from posting 12 hours after his death to continuing to share our story in all aspects of my journey through grief. You, the community, have encouraged everything about this. This will be the biggest thing I share. Listen closely. Brandon died of lymphohistiocytic myocarditis. Now, I posted this story back in 2021 because it really caught me. And let's talk about this. Those are some big words. Lymphohistiocytic. What is this? So let's break it down. Cytology, physiology. It's relating both to lymphocytes and histiocytes, 2 classes of white blood cells. So they're involved in the immune surveillance and attack and repair functions for the body. So if you got an invader, you kind of want your lymphocytes and histiocytes on the job. But if they overcongregate in a certain spot, they can do damage, and one of those places would be the heart. So lymphocytes, type of white blood cell with a spherical nucleus. If you're looking under a microscope, it's got a round nucleus. Mostly you see them in the lymphatic system. This is B cells, T cells, natural killer cells. And then you got your histiocytes. It's a macrophage, comes from the bone marrow, found in connective tissue. And if you get too many of them in your lungs or heart, it's not a great thing, because they're busy out there doing what they're doing, which is cleaning stuff up. So your natural killer cells, they go on, they just kill stuff. They can kill bacteria, but they can kill cells in your own body. They attach on like something's wrong. And boy, they release toxic chemicals and just kill stuff. And if it's a healthy heart cell, no bueno. And then the macrophages are out there cleaning all that detritus up. So these are 2 different types of, let me get my little dot pointy tool out. So these are 2 different types of staining here, the meson, trichrome, and the homoxycyllin eosin. So you see here, this is red blood cells here with this sort of maroonish color with the striations, because that's how the red blood, the cardiac tissue, not red blood cells. The cardiac tissue has that maroonish color and has those striations, and it's because it's a striated muscle type. And then you see here, there's all these things, these little dots in here. See all these little dots? They show up a little harder here. You can see that one. My dot is right over that. That does not have a round nucleus. That has a curved nucleus. But you see other ones in here with round dotted nuclei. And you see here we have macrophages, so CD68+. Those macrophages are all stained with this darkish color here. And then over here, this is probably a horseradish peroxidase kind of a stain or something with an antibody. So they stand out a little differently than you would see in the meson and the HE staining up here. And these are T cells down here, and you can see them. And so all of a sudden in this heart tissue, it's packed with macrophages, packed with T cells. And they're doing their jobs, right? Inflammation means white blood cells doing their work. But if there's too many of them, they can do a little too much work, if you catch my drift, right? So here we see different types. We have eosinophils, and we've got inflammatory cells all in this area throughout here. We got, this infiltrates. We got all this sort of see these clear vacuoles. It's just like we got edema. There's swelling in the tissues and all that. And then got your neutrophils here. So carrying on. Chantel wrote, quote, "This was determined by the Ontario Coroner's Office at Kingston General Hospital. Because of the absolute shock of a healthy, active 34-year-old man dropping dead, his body was sent to Kingston for a full and extensive autopsy. The results can take several months, and I've just recently received the full report. which had to be formally requested, of course. When they eventually gave us the cause of death, it shocked both the local coroner and our family doctor. It was assumed he died of a cardiomyopathy, a genetic condition that would have been born and gone undiagnosed, but this was not the case. Instead, it was lymphohistiocytic myocarditis caused by a virus. His heart was extensively damaged. There was so much scar tissue that it literally could not pump another beat. I had no chance at reviving him. The official report states that his entire heart was damaged. Not one ventricle or area, top to bottom, was undamaged. So the whole thing was damaged, fully attacked for multiple months. Brandon did not have COVID. His work supplied rapid tests, and we had done several throughout the summer and fall. The virus that killed him was likely the mRNA vaccine. Any medical professional I've spoken to and who has looked into this further has been quick to disregard the vaccine as the cause, as the research shows myocarditis cases only happening within 2 weeks of an administered dose. First off, what effing research? We are the effing research. Secondly, this is only what they are allowed to be reported. And that's true. So she says that, until then, she was a sheep. She fully admits that. Brandon and I both strongly believed in the vaccine and roll our eyes at protesters, conspiracy theorists, all the anti-vax posts, on and on and on, right? And I'll let you read that. You can pause that if you want to. But that's who Brandon Watt is at this point. That's what happened. And that's tragedy, but it's sometimes rare tragedies. Oh, here's another one. This just got posted on August 14th. Originally appeared on InfoWars, and I got this off of Vigilant News down there from Vigilant Fox. The cause of death of popular Australian YouTube content creator who promoted COVID masks, vaccines, lockdowns was revealed to be a rare heart condition known as lymphocytic myocarditis. It's a strange thing, but, sometimes rare things happen, and it's just, here's another one. Cause of death for YouTuber Pretty Pastel Please revealed after she died suddenly, age 30, following cruel speculation about personal life. The cause of death here is been revealed. She died last month. It was determined by the Tasmanian coroner that Alexandra's sudden death was due to a very rare, debilitating fatal infection of her heart, a condition that affects approximately 1 in every 15 million people, called lymphocytic myocarditis. I'd try and act surprised by this and pretend that I wasn't. Suddenly my bafflement has been lifted, but we've known about this for a really long time. We've been tracking this since 2021. There's papers, there's all kinds of papers around this. And so the question isn't, what are we going to do now that we know? The question is, why have people been resisting knowing? And what exactly is wrong with them? And if we can't describe them as being normal humans with normal human functioning of compassion and concern and a conscience, then what is up with this whole thing? That's what we have to be able to look squarely at right now, because this is not the work of people who follow the science or care about other human beings or progressive or thoughtful. This is the work of damaged human beings. Okay? And it does not go without a little bit of irony that the former CEO of YouTube even died of a very aggressive form of small cell lung carcinoma that came on suddenly and advanced very, very quickly. And these things, unfortunately, that's part of our landscape now. And I think we all know why. So in Japan, we'll note here that that there were really, 2020, this is observed deaths in blue, predicted or expected deaths in orange, and then excess would be anything in green in this third line down below. So if it's below zero, there's fewer than expected deaths. If it's above zero, more than expected. So we're trundling along. Ooh, a little dip down, fewer than expected. That's nice, trundling along. Little wiggle above, nothing. Okay, little wiggle in 2018, little wiggle down. But I think you can see sort of trends about the mean. 2020, actually, there's a dip here, and there's nothing. Through all of 2021, there are 0 excess deaths in Japan during a raging pandemic. And then all of a sudden in 2021, now suddenly excess deaths poke their little heads up. In 2022, it gets really bad, okay? We're way above what we expect here. And so that's not a good thing. And you can see here, there's the actual deaths in blue. They spike way up there, way above where they would be expected to be. So I'll note from the headline, you can see that's the observation. Now, this is how science works. You observe something and then you either prove or disprove the null hypothesis. We're going to now disprove, this null hypothesis, which is that this just happened by accident. That would be the null hypothesis. You know what? Sometimes things just happen. Sometimes you get excess deaths and it happens. Like, I know it didn't happen in 2015 or 16 or 17 or 18 or 19 or 20 or any of the years prior. And it suddenly started going wonky here in 2021, reaching a crescendo here towards the end of 2022 when the vaccine rollout hit a crescendo. But we're just going to pretend like that's all okay, I guess, right? And then this paper that just came out, this by Claire Rogers, James Thorpe, Christian Cosgrove, and Peter McCullough. It's in preprint, so it's going to be peer-reviewed, but let's see. It was approved on the 18th of June, 2024, and it's been online since the 19th of June or 18th of June, 2024. So, and then they received a second version the 18th of June, 2024. So I guess quick update, maybe saw a quick, I'm reading these lines here, maybe saw a quick something that needed editing. But at any rate, COVID-19 vaccines is the paper a risk factor for cerebral thrombotic syndrome. So there's a number of things that could go wrong. One of them is clotting. This is talking about cerebral thrombotic. A thrombosis is something that's traveling in your bloodstream that really shouldn't be there. It could be an embolism, could be an air bubble, a blob of fat, or a blood clot. So this cerebral thrombotic syndromes, okay, and that text is kind of small, so I broke it out a little bit first. Introduction, what was this? This is a population-based retrospective cohort study that assesses the rates of adverse events involving cerebral thromboembolism, CTE, after COVID-19 vaccines. Methods. Data were collected from the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and the FDA. The VAERS system from January 1st, 1990, all the way through December 31st, 2023. So again, cerebral thromboembolisms, or CTEs, adverse events after COVID-19 vaccines were compared to those after influenza vaccines and after all other vaccines using something called proportional reporting ratio analysis by time. So that way you can compare over time different things, even though one happened over many decades and one was over only a year or two. You can compare parts because you have a rate over time, okay? So looking at that, the results, what did they find? They found that there were 5,137 CTEs, adverse events, reported in the 3 years or 36 months after COVID-19 vaccines, compared to 52 for the influenza vaccines over the past 34 years, and only 282 for all other vaccines combined, excluding COVID-19, over the past 34 years. So 5,137 over 36 months compared to 52 over 408 months and 282 over 408 months. I think you can see the problem already. The PRRs, however, are significant when comparing those adverse events by time from COVID-19 vaccines to that of the influenza vaccine. P of less than 0.0001, or that to all other vaccines, 0.0001 p-value. That means less than 1 in 10,000 chance that this happened by accident, right? We would find a similar p-value for those excess deaths that we just looked at in Japan, right? Just stupidly unlikely to have happened by chance. So there's something other than chance happening here. This is what we would call a signal. In fact, we would call this a screaming safety signal. Did the people who were supposed to be in charge of monitoring that for us do anything about that? No, they didn't. They did nothing. The CTE, AE, PRRs by time for the COVID-19 vaccines versus the influenza vaccines was 1120. 1,120 times. That is a really big number. That is 112,000% more than you would expect. And for compared to all others was 207. So that would be 20,700% more likely comparing COVID-19 vaccines to all other vaccines. There's the results. This is stunningly bad. Stunningly bad. Well, How about this? And they said for cerebral venous thromboembolism, those are female predominant with a male-female odds ratio of 1.63. So women are 63% more likely to get what's called a cerebral venous thromboembolism. So thromboembolism, thrombus, we have a blood clot and it's gone walkabout and it comes up and it gets stuck in the cerebral venous, the cerebral venous system that drains the brain of blood. So it can go back to the heart and lungs and get oxygenated and go back to the brain. P-value there of less than 0.001. So again, females obviously at a higher risk of the cerebral venous TEs here. Conversely, cerebral arterial thromboembolism, so that's in the artery instead of the vein, has a non-significant male preponderance. So males a little bit more, but not that significant. Cerebral venous thromboembolism is far more common than cerebral arterial thromboembolism over 36 months with an odd ratio of 14.8. Anything over one means there's no different. The odds ratio is like basically nothing's happening. By 2, it's 100% more. 14.8, big number. Confidence interval of 14.0 to 15.5. It's somewhere in that zone. Could be 14, maybe 15.5. We don't know. 95% sure about that range. In atrial fibrillation, the most common identifiable cause of cerebral arterial thromboembolism, occurs far more commonly after the COVID-19 vaccine is compared to all other vaccines with a PRR of 123. Folks, these are shocking numbers. Absolutely shocking, right? Conclusions, they said here, is an alarming breach in the safety signal threshold concerning cerebral thrombosis, AEs, after COVID-19 vaccines compared to that of the influenza vaccines, and even when compared to that of all other vaccines. An immediate global moratorium on the use of COVID-19 vaccines is necessary, with an absolute contraindication in women of reproductive age. Anybody who is still promoting this for pregnant women is part of this death cult. That's all it is. We have to just label it for exactly what it is. This will probably get me in big trouble with the censors because they don't like facts, they don't like truth, they don't like science, they don't like life, to be honest. It's this serious, folks. We're running the flag upside down. We are sending smoke signals up into the sky. We're shooting off our pistols to get attention. We're yelling, ship is sinking, right? This is serious. So remember, when somebody shows you who they are, believe them the first time. If your doctor is still on this train right here, fire them right away. They're not on the side of life. They're not on your side. They're not on the side of health. Just how it is. And here, this just came in on Peter Sweden's Substack, excellent Substack. You can see down there how to get to it. His webpage there. And so Norway just reported that they saw a whopping 50% more excess deaths from disease among young people in 2023. Again, more than expected. And for some reason, again, they're baffled. We've been seeing, Peter knows what the reason is. He's not confused, but the doctors are baffled. The bad doctors. Good doctors aren't baffled. For some reason, we've been seeing massive numbers of excess deaths, and scientists are clueless about what could be the reason. Just baffling. A shocking new statistic from Norway shows that in 2023, there were over 50% excess deaths among young people aged 1 to 39 years old. 32% increase in cardiovascular deaths. I think we know what some of that's about. I presented some of that data. 51% excess deaths from disease. 36% excess deaths from all causes. So the dominating factor among the deaths from diseases were things like they noted other symptoms and undefined conditions. In other words, they're like, we don't know. And they aren't curious about knowing. They're not trying to find that out. That's the shocking part. Remember, when somebody shows you who they are, believe them. They've told us we don't care to look into why you young people are dying. That's what all these scientists are saying. Are like, we're just, it's idiopathic, just sort of some reason we don't know. What are you going to do? Right? Well, you're going to risk your salary there, Mr. or Mrs. Doctor, and you're going to actually look into it because that's the right thing to do. Now, we can even see this in the economic data of the United States. U.S. disabilities, they beginning to spike to new highs starting in 2021. So you can see here, this was sort of the old high right here. Well, right in the spring of 2021, bing, all of a sudden disabilities take off right here in 2020. What was happening in spring of 2021? 2 million people disabled. This is a shocking statistic. That's like World War II kind of numbers, right? It's not a good number. It's terrible. It's terrifying. And what's terrifying is how little interest this provoked within the power structures. Okay. And did you know this? Kind of a shocking statistic here. Did you know this? If you're over 35, you've had fewer vaccines in your lifetime than the average 6-month-old has had this year. It's not good. It's not a good thing. And so let me back up to this, which is, RFK Jr. just recently suspended his campaign and then threw down with Trump because of this. He said, I thought this was really important. And he said, quote, I began this journey as a Democrat, which is the party of my father and my uncle. It is a party which I pledge my own allegiance to. And long before I was old enough to vote, I attended my first Democratic convention at the age of 6 in 1960. And back then, the Democrats were the champions of the Constitution and of civil rights. The Democrats stood against authoritarianism, against censorship, against colonialism, imperialism, and unjust wars. We were the party of labor, of the working class. The Democrats were the party of government transparency and the champion of the environment. Our party was the bulwark against big money interests and corporate power. And true to its name, it was the party of democracy. Now, as you know, I left that party in October because it had departed so dramatically from the core values that I grew up with. It had become the party of war, of censorship, corruption, big pharma, big tech, big ag, and big money when it abandoned democracy by canceling the primary to conceal the cognitive decline of the sitting president. I left the party to run as an independent. That's it. It had become the party of war, censorship, corruption, big pharma, big tech, big ag, big money, big. And here's the shocking part about all of this. The implicit thing is a lot of people said, look, it doesn't matter that Kamala was sort of selected by this totally undemocratic process and she's just sort of anointed. Nobody really voted for her. But we're going to say it's very democratic how that happened, even though it wasn't, because it doesn't really matter. I can hear them saying, because what we really want is it doesn't actually matter if Kamala is qualified or unqualified, a genius or a moron. It's irrelevant because it's the people around her. We're going to be run by this committee of people. It's who's around her. And we trust the people that would surround themselves around Kamala more than we would trust the people who might surround themselves around. We don't trust Donald Trump, the person. We trust the team of people around Kamala. Well, here's the thing. I'm okay with trusting teams of people if they've proven themselves to be qualified to run things, right? So look what just happened over the last 4 years or 10 years or even 20 years. And we find out the CDC is not up to the job. The FDA is not up to the job. The Department of Energy is not up to the job. The Department of Education is not up to the job. That, in fact, the proof is in the lack of longevity in U.S. citizens, in the amount of deaths of despair, which would include fentanyl overdoses and the rates of obesity, because we have a failed regulatory structure. So I don't understand fundamentally the people who are out there going, you know what we need? We need more of that. We need bigger government. I want to vote for the person who clearly stands for running all of this by some big shadowy team of people who face no accountability, no consequences for failing miserably at their jobs and making my life arguably worse. I am totally confused by people who think that's a good idea. But we have to go beyond that too, which is that nothing at all in this actually concerns me a lot. Were you aware that we're facing just an overall, this is very bad, but the world is actually being killed. It's not dying, that's passive. It's being killed. We're doing something. We humans are doing something that has caused insect populations all over the globe to decline by amounts that are best described using the word apocalypse, right? The entomologists, people who study insects, estimate that we're losing 10 to 20% of all the insects on Earth every decade. Just the overall level amount of insects. Like, this is a 400 million year old food web that's collapsing principally in the last 10 to 20 years. And this should alarm us, and we should talk about it. We should have actual experts on there, people who can do something, who have agency, power, and authority to begin doing stuff, which is unraveling whatever the destructive practices are, but they probably involve certain classes of pesticides and things like that. The problem is the companies that make those make billions of dollars selling those very pesticides into the food chain, And of course, that makes all sorts of derivative downstream things happen, like selling lots of chronic disease medications, and doctors are fully employed, and the undertakers are busy, or whatever the story is. It's gross, but it's not. It's anti-life. It's pro-death. It's evil. It's evil. It's evil. We should care about these things. I do. So what do we do with that? That's all depressing. So I just took this picture 10 minutes ago before I came in the studio, and that is Evie and I looking out over the back. We just put a little liner down, and now we have some water in there, and we're using our energy and talents right now as much as we can to bring this land up to maximum health. We're building the soil up. Well, we're not doing it. The cows in the background are doing this, right? And oh yeah, frogs. I put that little pond liner thing, that little lined puddle, just a couple weeks ago, and look what happened. I don't even know where they come from. They just show up like boink. They come out of magic. I feed these. I find things for them, insects and worms and things, and we're good buddies. I love frogs. I don't know why. And we're growing things like grapes. We've planted lots of grapes. This is them coming into their 4th year of production. I think we're going to get a pretty good harvest this year. These are Concord grapes. They're going to be bright purple by the time they're done. They're going to smell like Welch's grape juice. You'll know they're done and are ready to be harvested when you can smell them from about 20, 30 feet away, maybe more, and just packed with antioxidants. And it's literally, I know it's grape juice. It sounds like a kid's drink. It's actually one of the healthiest things you could possibly produce. And of course, these vines are growing on a thick bed of our own compost that we've made here. So all coming in. And then finally, we know we are on the right track here because I just took this just 10 minutes ago because I know I can always find them. Oh, there's this big old flock of turkeys hanging out here. And this is all their little young'uns this year. And you can see, sorry for the shaky cam, there's on 30x zoom. I'm just holding it there. But those are all turkeys. And the reason it's important to see the turkeys here is because they mainly eat insects. There were no turkeys living in our field when we got here 4 years ago. We've brought the field back up to enough of a level of health. There's the mama coming up behind the tree there. Beautiful copper wings. The reason I know how healthy it is because I knew I could go out and I could find them because there are turkeys in our field every single day now because it's now packed with insects. So we're bringing all of these things back. And this is the antidote that we have to bring forward here. We can use our human brains to improve things or to wreck things. The party of despair and censorship and 15-minute cities and central bank digital currencies and control, they are actively ruining health, wealth, happiness, contentment, pleasure. They're just against all of that stuff. And it's important that we recognize them for what they are and what they're doing, because the first step, you got to resist it. You have to resist that. So I've said this for a long time. Listen, plant a garden. Your food is killing you if you're buying at a standard grocery store. And I know for a lot of you, this is going to be a tall order, but you got to start finding a way to eat food that is not killing you anymore, or making you sick, or making you a lifetime customer of some big pharma medical industry sort of a project, right? It's gross. It's time to reject that. We have to stand for something different and better in this country if we're going to be better about all of this. And I want a future I can believe in. The motto of my company, Peak Prosperity, is creating a future worth inheriting, or creating a world worth inheriting. I like both of those. That's what we need to do here. So this is ultimately a message of optimism because people are waking up and we're figuring stuff out in real time. Now, what I do as your information scout is I go forward and I figure out what's going on. We got a lot to talk about for people who are Peak Prosperity subscribers. Come on back. We're going to talk about this stuff today. We're going to need some really wise leadership. I'm worried we don't really have any on the horizon for at least the next 6-7 months. It's going to be tough going. So at any rate, come on back. Everybody else, thank you so much for listening. Please be for life. Let's do this. This death cult thing is just... hold them in contempt. Move on. Let's have a different conversation. Because why? Because we should. And I reject what they're up to. I'd rather see a world full of turkeys and frogs and happy humans and non-autistic kids than the opposite. So that's what I want to talk to you about today. Thanks so much for listening. See you next time. And please come by Peak Prosperity. If you want to keep talking about the Trump assassination, anything else on your mind, we're talking about all of it. Bye for now.